This video is sponsored by Classic Football Shirts, the best place to get your classic and vintage football shirts. To get cheap retro Palace shirts, click the link in the description below. And for an extra 10% off, use the code CFSPJ10 at checkout. Hello and welcome to the Crystal Palace podcast. I'm Alfonso Greenbrook, and in today's podcast, I'll be looking over the game against West Brom, but bring you my match review, player rankings and my man of the match. As well as this, I'm also going to bring you interviews with Roy Hodgson, Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Johan Cabaye after the game. So let's begin. Palace ended their season by cruising to victory against West Brom, finishing the campaign in 11th spot after extending their unbeaten run to 6 games. After a drab first half, player of the season Wilfried Zaha capped off a fine campaign by opening the scoring with his 9th goal of the season, before Patrick van Aanholt netted for the 3rd game in succession to secure the points for Roy Hodgson's team. In textbook final day of the season conditions, with the sun shining and the fans decked out in t-shirts, Palace started positively and nearly found a way in front after just 7 minutes, when Luka Milivojevic played a 1-2 with Johan Cabaye to create a sight on goal. But he was unable to extend his lead at the top of the Eagles' goal-scoring charts as he slammed his effort just wide. Albion, playing for only pride after the relegation had been confirmed earlier on in the week, also saw Gregor's Kucharyk's shot meet the same fate not long after. But that would be as threatening as things got throughout a quiet contest that had an end of the season feel to it. Palace controlled proceedings from then on, but during the first half they did not create many dangerous moments themselves, although they did force Ben Foster into a smart save on 18 minutes, when Wan-Bissaka stole the ball from Hegazi on the touchline and found James McArthur in the box. And he squared the ball to Zaha, who saw the former England international save his snapshot with his feet. That was as good as the first half got, but the Eagles started the second half much sharper and it was one-way traffic for the majority of it. Early into proceedings after the restart, Zaha cut the ball back for Ruben Loftus-Cheek, but the midfielder couldn't quite cap the end of his loan spell with a goal as he shot straight at Forster. And minutes later Zaha screwed wide after connecting with a Van Aanholt cross. They then carved out a golden chance on 62 minutes when Andres Townsend found Zaha on the halfway line, who skipped past Craig Dawson and sped towards the box. And he unselfishly returned the ball to his strike partner, who was faced with only Forster to beat, but Townsend fired well wide. But with 20 minutes to go, the deadlock was broken. Once again focusing their attacks down the left, Ruben Loftus-Cheek drove from the halfway line and fed Van Aanholt on the left flank. And his centre was side-footed home from 8 yards out by gleeful Zaha to register his 5th in his last 6 Premier League games. After that, it was just a case of how many the Eagles wanted to end their season with, and with 12 minutes to go they doubled their lead with another well-worked, intricate team goal. Cabaye picked up the ball in a good area and found Townsend, and he played a 1-2 with Loftus-Cheek on the edge of the box before slipping in Van Aanholt. And the Dutchman rounded Forster before finding enough space on his shot for it to creep in over the line, despite the despairing efforts of Hegazi on the line. With the points in the bag, Papa Suarez was handed his first Premier League appearance since September 2016 as a late substitute, as the curtain came down on another remarkable and ultimately successful season in SE25. Crystal Palace signed off their 2017-18 campaign with a first straight win in the Premier League as they defeated West Brom 2-0 on Sunday. The Eagles beat the already relegated Baggies to end their season on a positive note, with Palace finishing the season in 11th place. Wilfried Zaha and Patrick van Aanholt got the goals for Palace, but there were plenty of talking points arising from the game. Here are 5 of them. Number 1. Get him on the plane. Ruben Loftus-Cheek has impressed for Crystal Palace this season, and he did so again here. He is considered a serious contender for replacing England's World Cup squad, and he would have done his chances no harm at all here, with another fine display in a Palace shirt. The 22-year-old was involved in many good passages of play from a Palace perspective, and it was telling that the West Brom players had to resort to fouling him to stop him. He has shown this season that he is a consistent performer in the Premier League, and now deserves the opportunity to showcase his talent on the big stage this summer. Number 2. Van's the man. Patrick van Aanholt endured an indifferent start to the season, with the former Sunderland man in and out of the team and at fault defensively at times, including at Bristol City in the League Cup. But he has finished the season in superb form and capped off another stellar display here against the Baggies with the second goal. It was his third goal in 3 matches, after also scoring against Leicester City and Stoke City in recent weeks, and meant that he finished the season with 5 goals, all of which have come in his last 10 games. He has made the left-back slot his own and was given a standing ovation as he left the field late on, to be replaced by Papa Soare. Number 3. Wilfried's on fire. Wilfried Zaha has been Palace's main threat all season, with the Eagles not winning a Premier League game without him in the side. But the way he finished the campaign, with 5 goals and an assist in his last 6 games, has simply re-emphasised his importance to the side. He is a talisman figure, and with some of the Premier League's top clubs circling around him to try and sign him this summer, the Eagles must resist every interest if they are to progress. Number 4. Freezy does it again. In winning this game, Crystal Palace made it 3 wins in a row for the first time this season and since April 2017. It enabled them to finish the campaign on 44 points and in 11th place, with Palace just missing out on a top half finish on goal difference as Newcastle finished just ahead of them. Nevertheless, the fine end to the season has helped the Eagles claw their way back up the table to their second highest finishing position in the Premier League, and gives them optimism for the future and a platform to build from next season. And number 5, what next for the rock bottom Baggies? In contrast, this defeat meant that West Brom finished bottom of the Premier League for the second time, having also done so back in 2009 and for the 10th time in the top flight. It also meant that the Baggies have won none of their 17 Premier League games this season when they have conceded the first goal. This was, however, the Baggies' first defeat since caretaker manager Darren Moore took charge, and questions remain over whether he will still be in charge next season. Moore did not want to be drawn on his own future, but said that he would be part of any process moving forward. So I'm now going to move on to the player ratings, but before I start, don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Crystal Palace for all the latest Palace news. And also, if you're on Facebook, do feel free to join our Facebook group, which is a really great place to join in with discussions and also share your opinions with other fans. And much like a forum, it's also a great place to upload any videos, photos or any news articles you've found that you want to share with other Palace fans, then of course you can do so on the Facebook group. So like I said there in that small introduction, if you are someone who, especially during the summer, wants to keep up with all the latest Palace news, whether that be transfers in or transfers out, or whether it's just any news about the club itself, then of course do head over to our Twitter and Facebook pages at Crystal Palace, where of course is a great place to get all of the latest Palace news. And of course we'll do a few polls on there as well, so if you do want to get involved, then of course do feel free to do so. Now of course if you're on Facebook as well as, liking the page, you can also join the Facebook group, which of course I'm a member of, so you'll be accepted straight away. But of course this is a really great place, to have discussions with other Palace fans, so whether it's you commenting on what someone else has said, or whether it's you putting up your own opinion so that others can see it, whatever it is, of course do feel free to get involved in there. And like I've said, much like a forum, it's also a great place to upload any videos and photos, because of course fans want to see your perspective of the game. And of course if you do happen to find any news articles which we haven't found, then of course also feel free to put it up on there. Now another great place to share your opinion is in the YouTube comments. So if you are listening to the podcast on YouTube, then do feel free to drop a comment below the video with your player ratings, where you rate the players' performances from 1 to 10, with of course 10 being the best. Now the main reason I want you to do this is just so I can come back and look at the video, and rather than just having my opinion of the game where I have my player ratings, I can read what the listeners thought about the game, and that gives me a greater idea of not only how I thought the players performed, but obviously as a whole how the fans thought the players performed. Now of course even if you don't want to do this, then just drop your views of the game below, and if you're a West Brom fan, your general thoughts of the season, whether you think Pardew was at fault for being relegated, or whether you thought actually your performances have been good under your new manager Darren Moore, and whether you do think he'll get the new job. And of course if you are a Palace fan, do comment below your views of the season. And obviously with the transfer window opening soon, I think it's on Thursday I believe, of course also do feel free to comment below with any new transfers that you think Palace need going forward. And once again, like with the player ratings, the only reason I want you to comment on the video is so that I can come back and read what you said and obviously see what your guys' opinion of the game is. But also any Palace or any West Brom fans that come to the video, they can of course read it as well as listening to my opinion, so they can get sort of a broader opinion of the game. And like I've said, if you do want to get involved, especially with the transfers coming up, then of course do comment them below, and of course I will go forth and do comment on them as well. So if you want a discussion with myself, then of course do comment below the video. So if you do want to follow any of these social media pages or join the Facebook group, then do check all links that will be in the description below. But I'm now going to move on to my player ratings, starting in goal with Wayne Hennessy, who I'm going to give a 6. Catching a couple of crosses was the sum total of Wayne Hennessy's involvement in the first half for the Palace goalkeeper. So Wayne Hennessy here, I've given him a 6, and realistically, in a game where we kept a clean sheet, and basically where West Brom rarely did sort of challenge us in front of goal and rarely did create that many attacking opportunities, it was really quite understandable that Hennessy didn't really have that much to do within the game. Now in terms of the first half, as I mentioned in that introduction, other than catching a few crosses here and there and the fact that he commanded his area, which was of course good to see, but other than that, realistically there was nothing really that impressive in the game, and that's basically because West Brom rarely did sort of challenge him or the defence to that matter of fact. So realistically, in the first half, his only real involvement was catching a few of the crosses, which is of course great to see, because that's something we've been calling for him to do for ages, in terms of he's got his heights and now he needs to command the box. And certainly since the new goalkeeping coach has come in, Dean Kiley, he seems to improve Wayne Hennessy's performances, and he seems to be a lot more confident going forth and claiming crosses, and that was most evident in that first half, which was of course great to see. But to be honest, like I've said already, it was a quiet first half for him, other than catching a few crosses, and the second half it was even quieter, didn't really have anything to do, and that's obviously, especially with us going 1-0 up, 2-0 up, that sort of killed any momentum that West Brom had, so really they didn't really threaten on our goal. But to be honest, overall, because there isn't really much to say about his performance, so you know, I've got to say that he looks a lot more assured, not only in this game, but especially recently he's looked a lot more assured in goal, which is of course, if you have a goalkeeper who's got confidence, he's putting in assured performances, then of course that sort of relates and reflects on the rest of the team. So of course, if you've got a confident goalkeeper, your back line's going to be confident that if they make a mistake, the goalkeeper's going to make a save. So of course, if you've got that confidence, then it's obviously going to improve the whole team's performance. And certainly Wayne Hennessy here, we've certainly seen that actually his improvement has also seen an improvement in the back four as well. Now one other thing, obviously other than the fact that he was catching crosses and was assured, there was one other thing I picked up, and is the fact that he came off his line quite a lot and also was very good with his distribution. So coming off the line, whenever West Brom, because they've got, you know, big men up front, whenever they had the chance, they were putting balls into the box, and it's either the fullback stops the ball coming in, the centre back heads it clear, or Hennessy goes forth and catches it. So quite a few times he came off his line, made them catches, which of course stops any chances that West Brom have of attacking. And at the beginning of the season, we didn't see that from Hennessy, and the fact that he came off his line, made himself big and made these catches. So it's of course great to see that, especially in the last few weeks, he's now actually starting to command his area and come off the line more often. And in terms of his distribution, you know, we know how good he is at kicking the ball long, and of course in the second half when we had Christian Benteke on, that worked. But in the first half, obviously where you haven't got that big man up front, I do think he had to change his distribution, but he's still done it well. So rather than just kicking it aimlessly upfield for someone like Zaha or Townsend to head down, because they're not the tallest, he'd sort of play it on the ground, get the ball forward, and which of course is much better because you have more chance of, you know, maintaining your possession, whereas if you just kick it long, you know, it can be intercepted. So of course that was great to see, the fact that he was able to have good distribution, but also the main thing for me really, and the main reason I've given him a 6, is just the fact that he came off his line and made quite a number of good claimed quite a number of good crosses. So overall, Wayne Hennessy here, not the best performance, not the worst, but realistically you can't really expect too much from him when he isn't really troubled. But I do think a 6 is a fair result. Now let's move on to the right back, Wan-Bissaka, who I'm going to give a 7. The only change Roy Hodgson made from the 2-1 victory against Stoke and the start in the final game of the season is at least the breakthrough youngster and Crystal Palace's young player of the season deserves. Looked as close to a right back as Zaha, but when he was called into defensive action he responded well. Loves a sliding tackle. So Wan-Bissaka here, I've given him a 7, and as what I've been saying for the last few weeks, you know, with Joe Ward's performances, you know, Joe Ward wasn't performing up to scratch, and I said that Wan-Bissaka needs to get put back into the side, purely based on the fact that his performances before he got taken out the side against Brighton, his performances were absolutely outstanding, and when you consider he was thrown in the deep end, it was very impressive to see. So of course when Joe Ward went off injured last weekend, obviously Martin Kelly came on the pitch for that game, but before this game, and I predicted it, I thought that Wan-Bissaka was going to come back and play in that right back slot, and that's exactly what he did. And even though he hasn't played the last sort of few games, he's carried on from where he left off, you know, a few weeks back, and once again put in a very good performance. Now of course it was almost an unchanged side. Other than Joe Ward going out, it was an unchanged side, which is what I predicted in my preview. So of course Wan-Bissaka came in for Joe Ward, the only change of the side, And like I say, I've said this for quite a long time now, but why change a winning side? Because if you're winning, it's clearly working. So make as minimal changes as possible. And of course, Aaron Wan-Bissaka was one of them. But of course, he didn't really change that much. And actually, if anything, he sort of improved our performance even more. Now, of course, you know, final game of the season, you normally play some youngsters. But realistically, we wanted to try and finish in the top 10, which ultimately we didn't do because Newcastle won. But even still, he didn't play the last game of the season because we wanted to give a youngster a turn. We played him last game of the season because he's played so well this season that, of course, it's the least he deserves, especially when he's broke through the side and just performed so well in the first team. And of course, with him being the young player of the year, when we're free from relegation, you might as well play him anyway, whether irrespective of whether he's good or bad. But obviously he's been good, but irrespective of that, you still play him because he obviously deserved that chance to play in the team, and certainly he did do that. But in terms of his positioning play, obviously I thought he was fantastic defensively and was quite crucial in terms of us keeping a clean sheet. But actually, quite a lot of the time, unlike Joe Ward, where Joe Ward's very defensive, Aaron Wan-Bissaka gets that balance right between defence and attack. And quite often in the game, his positioning looked like he was playing as much as a right back as Zaha. So it was almost as if he was playing so far forward, he might as well have been an extra winger. Now, that obviously is credit to him, the fact that whenever he's got the chance, he goes forward and tries to, you know, provide overlaps, which is, of course, great to see. But the thing that's even more impressive is that Joe Ward, when he goes forward, he sometimes, you know, loses his man or hasn't got the pace to catch up. Whereas Wan-Bissaka, he can go forward, he can play really well, he can link up with Zaha, Townsend, Loftus-Cheek. But when he has to go back and gets called back into that defensive action, when he has to go back and make a challenge or, you know, make a block, he's still able to do that. And that's the balance which you've seen Patrick van Aanholt improve his performances this season. And certainly that's what we saw from Aaron Wan-Bissaka here. Because like I keep saying, Joe Ward isn't fantastic going forward, so he mainly stays defensive, whereas Wan-Bissaka is not only good going forward, but also he's very good at getting back and making up for that loss of space. So the fact that he's able to, when called upon, come back and defend, that's of course really impressive as well. And of course, when you're under pressure from West Brom, yes, ultimately we weren't really that threatened, but when, you know, they had a few chances going forward, he responded well and done exactly what you would expect from him. But the main reason I've given him a 7 is that, of course, he got the clean sheet and his performance was good. But the main thing for me is just the amount of slide tackles he made in the game. Now, of course, we've seen this season that he's a player who likes to make a slide tackle, and 9 times out of 10 his slide tackles are accurate, which just goes to show that actually not only is he good going forward and just his overall defensive play, but actually he's quite specialist in making a good slide tackle. So for me personally, yes, his performance was good and, you know, he does deserve the 7. The thing that just makes sure it is a 7 is just the fact that he made so many sliding challenges in the game. Now, of course, people would say these are sort of the old-fashioned tackles, and that's exactly it. You know, you want players to be physical, to put a hard tackle in, you know, get the ball off the opposition, and that's exactly what Wan-Bissaka does. You know, although he used to play as a winger, he's been converted to a right back, and he's doing a fantastic job there in terms of not only just doing the sort of simple things right, but just going in with these old-fashioned tackles, you know, giving something for the team. And of course, like we've seen quite a lot this season, these sliding tackles are really important in terms of taking the ball off the opposition. Now, the final thing really for me to touch on about his performance is the fact that his passing was very good as well. Now, of course, this is probably something he's improved on recently because I think this is his 7th game in the first team, and I think the 6 ones before that, yes, he was good going forward, but he didn't really have that end product in terms of crossing or, you know, getting the ball into the box. Whereas in this game here against West Brom, whether it's just because it was more relaxed and, you know, we were already safe from relegation and, you know, that was a burden off the players' backs, whatever it was, he seemed to be a lot more confident going forward, a lot more freedom, and whenever he did go forward, he did show how good his passing can be. Now, of course, it isn't perfect in terms of crosses into the box and in terms of picking up the ball, but actually the fact that he's able to pass the ball around and be involved in this sort of intricate build-up play with one touches here and there, the fact that he's able to be involved in that as well is very good as well. So personally for me, a 7 for him. Truly does deserve it for obviously his defensive performance, but also the contribution he gave going forward, as well as his sliding tackles. Personally for me, does warrant that 7. So do comment below with your views on Wan-Bissaka's performance and whether you do think he'll be our starting right back next season. Now to move on to the centre back James Tomkins, who I am going to give a 6. Did well to marshal Rondon, which is easier said than done. In truth, there were very few times that Tomkins was called upon, booked for a high challenge from James McLean and managed his game very well. So James Tomkins here, I've given him a 6, and much like his performances have been this season, he's very consistent and once again put in a solid performance and certainly did deserve, in my opinion, to get that clean sheet. But it might be surprising that when you consider we had a very good overall team performance and we kept that clean sheet, it's a wonder why I've given him a 6 as opposed to a 7. And realistically, the only reason I've given him a 6 as opposed to a 7 is just because he was rarely challenged in the game. And, you know, although he defended relatively well for the whole game, he managed his time on the pitch well. But the main thing for me is the fact that because he wasn't really challenged, he didn't really have to show off his talents. So realistically, he was just a man in the team rather than having any sort of massive influence defensively, purely because West Brom weren't really challenging us. So, you know, I've given him a 6, not to say that he had a bad game, it's just because he didn't really show much in the game because he was rarely challenged by the West Brom players. But in terms of one player in particular from the opposition that I want to pick out is Rondon. For Rondon, he's always a threat for West Brom, and certainly this season he's been pivotal to their turnaround. Yes, ultimately they still got relegated, but certainly Rondon has been an important player for them. And of course, it's easier said than done marking Rondon, and I do think that James Tomkins done a relatively good job on there himself. Now, in truth, there were very few times, like I've said already, that he was actually called upon, so that's the reason I've given him a 6, to go back to that, because he was really challenged by the West Brom players. You can't really give him a 7 or an 8 for that, basically because he didn't really have to show any of his class. And I suppose one of the reasons I could downgrade him is the fact that he was booked for a high tackle on James McLean. But realistically, sometimes you have to take a tackle or take a challenge for the team, and of course that's what he done in that situation. And of course after that, he managed his game well, make sure he didn't get a second yellow card, and of course continued with this solid defensive performance at the back. Now, of course, like I've said, he wasn't outstanding in the game because he was rarely challenged by the West Brom players, but I still thought there were some vital moments in the game, and that's what you want from a defender, that if they're not rarely challenged, the 1 or 2 chances that the opposition get to challenge, you've obviously got to make sure that you're able to clear them and be in control of them, and of course Tomkins still did this. Now, of course, the final thing really for me, it's not necessarily about the game, but it's about the unbeaten partnership that Tomkins has with Sakho. And it's an absolutely outstanding stat, the fact that whenever James Tomkins and Sakho have played together as a defensive partnership, they've never lost a game. They've conceded very few goals, as well as not losing a game. So that's absolutely outstanding, and certainly if they can carry on this form into next season, realistically it's going to come to an end at some point, because you don't go a whole season with your 2 defensive players A, not getting injured, and B, not losing a game. But realistically, the fact that they've got this form and such a good partnership is really impressive, and hopefully will put us into good stead for next season. But like I've said, the fact that Sakho and Tomkins are still unbeaten at the back is A, quite crucial and quite critical to the fact that we stayed up, but also will be a really good thing going forward. So once again here, James Tomkins wasn't really challenged by the West Brom players, but he still had some vital moments within the game to keep us in it, and of course to win that clean sheet. So I do think a 6 is an overall fair result. Now to move on to his centre-back partner, Mamadou Sakho, who I am going to give a 6. Like his defensive partner, Sakho was not required to put in a huge defensive shift. On the ball, he was his usual adventurous self, and kick-started some attacking moves from the back. So Mamadou Sakho here, I've given him a 6, and as I said briefly with James Tomkins' performance, and of course as I said in that introduction, I do think that Sakho, it was a very, sort of not necessarily subpar performance, but a performance where he wasn't really tested. So realistically, because he didn't really have that much to do in the game, there wasn't really much of note to talk about. Now, of course, like I've said, because West Brom, they've already been relegated, so they didn't really have any momentum going into this game, other than the fact that they had obviously been unbeaten in 5 games. So realistically, they're already down. They're not necessarily going to have any fight left in them. So realistically, they're not going to have. I have realised that I'm saying realistically quite a lot, but you've got to say that actually West Brom, they're already down, not really going to have that momentum. So really, they're not really going to have that much threat in front of goal, and that was quite evident in the fact that Sakho and Tomkins alike weren't really required to do that much defensive work. But still, like I said with Tomkins, when called upon, they still done the work, they still done the job, which is of course great to see. But the thing that puts Sakho's performance aside from Tomkins is the fact that, like always, he was very adventurous on the ball. So Sakho loves to pick up the ball and drive forward and, kickstart attacking moves, counter-attacks. And certainly we saw that quite a lot in this game. And, when you consider we dominated possession for large periods of the game, that was obviously down to the fact that we were playing the ball on the ground so that West Brom wouldn't be able to intercept it, and we were playing some nice intricate football. Now, of course, Sakho wasn't really involved in any of the goals with that intricate play, but the fact that he's able to start up attacks from the back by picking up that ball, driving forward, and of course passing it out, rather than just crossing it, but passing it out on the floor, keeping possession, that's of course really impressive as well. Now, of course, there isn't really too much else to say about his performance other than the fact that he wasn't really challenged. But I would say that he was solid. You know, that's a word I use quite often to describe players when, you know, the defence keeps a clean sheet. And certainly here, Mamadou Sakho against West Brom, he was certainly solid enough in the back. And that just goes to show that actually, even when he isn't challenged, he's still able to put in a shift to obviously restrict the opposition, because it could take one chance for West Brom to score. But the fact that he stayed solid throughout and, you know, done his job when called upon is of course very impressive as well. Now, of course, not really much more to say about him. You know, I've given him a 6, so realistically you can say not necessarily the most impressive game, but still done the job. So do comment below with your thoughts on that Sakho and Tomkins partnership, and whether you do think actually that will be really, you know, that will be help us to push to the next level this season. But Mamadou Sakho here, a 6 for him. Now to move on to the left back, Patrick van Aanholt, who I'm going to give a 9. Really impressed in one-on-one defending against Jay Rodriguez, who struggled to get the better of the fans' favourite. Created chances every time he ventured forward, and turned provider for Zaha to score in the 70th minute. Showed outstanding composure to round Forster and score from a tight angle when he doubled the scoreline. So Patrick van Aanholt here, I've given him a 9, and absolutely once again, the fact that he scored in 3 games consecutively just goes to show how he's one of our most informed players at the minute, but also goes to show how outstanding he has been the second half of the season. And, you know, this performance was no different, you know, he impressed me once again, and he's fully deserving of that 9 he gave me, or I gave him. Now, in terms of, you know, the main thing that I saw, having looked back at the game and obviously being at the game, one of the best players for West Brom this season in what has been a bad season for them. So the fact that Patrick van Aanholt was able to deal really, really well in that one-on-one sort of defending situation, the fact that he was able to do well and, you know, restrict one of West Brom's biggest attacking threats, that was of course really great to see. And, you know, when you consider a fan's favourite in Van Aanholt able to keep one of their key players quiet is of course great to see, and of course that gives us momentum to actually go forth in the game like we did and push on and go on to win it. Now, of course, he's a left back, he's kept a clean sheet, that's of course great to see, but much like what I said with Wan-Bissaka, he was one of these players who likes to go forward, and quite often in the game he went forward and was quite effective in that role. Now, of course, I've criticised him at the beginning of the season because whenever he went forward, he left space at the back, and, you know, obviously teams exploited that, and especially against Bristol City where he was a horrendous. You know, you've got to say that actually beginning of the season he was absolutely terrible. But the fact that Roy Hodgson's come in, the new coaching staff have come in, and the fact that he's just turned his own season around is of course very impressive, and it just goes to show the complete juxtaposition between the beginning of the season and the second half of the season, because in the beginning of the season, whenever he ventured forwards, he left space and we got punished, whereas now he's getting that balance between attack and defence right, and as of course when he is going forward he's making good use of that. So whenever he ventured forward in the game against West Brom here, he did obviously, you know, create chances for other players. So rather than being a ball hog as people call it, he was actually looking to create chances for his teammates. But also I do think that actually the fact that he got an assist in this game, Zaha, really just gives him the credit for what he deserves, because realistically when you go forward and you're always looking to create chances for your teammates, it's also nice that you get rewarded, you know, with an assist to go with that. And of course that was Zaha's, you know, Zaha, great finish from himself, but the fact that Van Aanholt was able to get the ball into the area in the first place was also very impressive. Now, of course, later on in the game, to make it 2-0, Van Aanholt scored the second goal right in front of the Homesdale, and of course that was a great finish. Now, before I go on to talk about the goal itself in terms of him rounding the keeper, which was great, you know, you've got to talk about the team build-up play, because as good as the goal was in terms of Van Aanholt, you know, picking up the ball when he gets into the box and rounding the goalkeeper, the fact that there was so much build-up play, one touch passing on the edge of the area, all of this beautiful passing in that tight space of area, and the fact they were able to get the ball to Van Aanholt, that was of course very impressive as well. Now, of course, the build-up play was impressive, like I've already said, you know, all of the passing, but the fact that Van Aanholt, even though he's a left back, the fact that he's probably one of our best finishers at the club, and the fact that he's able to, you know, show outstanding composure to take the ball around the goalkeeper Forster, and then from a very tight angle still poke it into the goal and put enough pace in it to get it over the line, that was of course very impressive. And also the fact that we had scored just 8 minutes prior to that, obviously we had the momentum on our side, so he got that goal which basically killed the game off and made sure that we went on to win the game. So not only is this guy just an outstanding footballer in terms of his offensive and defensive contribution, but also he obviously killed the game off, which of course is very important in the thing. But what I've got to say is this guy, I've said this at the beginning, but 3 goals in 3 games, which is very impressive form. You know, for a striker that would be absolutely outstanding, but for a left back is even better, because realistically he has no right to be on the edge of the box, you know, running onto balls. The fact that he's able to, you know, get his movement right to get into them positions, as well as getting back in defending, is of course great to see. And it's obviously great to see that his performances, both defensively and offensively, so defensively getting that clean sheet and offensively getting a goal and an assist, it's obviously great to see that he's, you know, getting rewarded for his performances. And to be honest, I absolutely love him at the minute. You know, he may not necessarily be my most favourite player, but actually at the moment he's one of the first names on the team sheet, because if you sort of wipe away that first half of the season, he's been absolutely outstanding in the second half of the season. So of course you've got to give credit to himself for improving his performances, but also to the coaching staff and, you know, the manager Roy Hodgson as well. The fact they've been able to turn this season around and turn him into such a good left back overall, you know, not just defensively but also offensively. The fact they've been able to do that is of course credit to them, but of course credit must go to the player for turning around what was a horrendous start to the season. So Patrick van Aanholt here, another good offensive and defensive performance from him, and fully deserving of the 9. And of course it was another game that he got a goal, making it 3-3, and of course another game where he got rewarded for his attacking threat with an assist. So Patrick van Aanholt here, a 9 for him. Now to move on to the midfielder Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who I am going to give a 7. Looked lively on the left hand side of the midfield 4. Positioned himself well in the box to receive a ball from Zaha after a well worked free kick, but fired straight at Forster. So Ruben Loftus-Cheek here, I've given him a 7, and much like his performance has been, or his performances have been over the last sort of weeks or so, you know, especially against Leicester and of course Stoke City last weekend, his performances have been very good, and this game was no different here. You know, yes, it was our last game, we're going to see him possibly in a Palace shirt, but what a way it was to send off with another classy performance. But in terms of his position on the field, once again we were playing sort of this unorthodox 4-4-2 formation, or however you look at it. We were playing with 4 players in midfield with 2 sort of centre forwards who weren't really playing as forwards as well. So it was almost as if we were playing a 4-6, you know, as you were. So realistically, playing in that midfield 4, Ruben Loftus-Cheek is playing slightly out of position, but it didn't really seem to affect his game, because playing sort of on that left hand side of that midfield 4, I thought he'd done a really sterling job. Now in terms of his positional play, I thought he positioned himself really well in quite a lot of when we had quite a lot of chances in the game. You know, the most notable one is where Zaha, after a well worked free kick, managed to find Loftus-Cheek inside the box, but he obviously fired straight at Forster. So obviously not only is he Loftus-Cheek turning provider for some of his teammates, but actually some of his teammates, especially Zaha, are now looking for him inside the box to see whether they can get him goals there. And of course that's great to see, you know, the fact that he's able to not only position himself well to get other players involved, but the fact that when other players are on the ball, he's able to get into positions where, you know, other players in the team can actually find him, so he can obviously get his own chances. That's of course great to see as well. And you know, that one in particular, with that great work from Zaha to get the ball from that worked free kick to Loftus-Cheek, is of course great to see as well. Now of course, like I've said, you know, I've said this quite a lot this season when he's played, because he's quite an influential player, but he does make things happen for Palace, because although we didn't get a goal or an assist here against West Brom, I still do think in terms of in that midfield battle, having control of the midfield and obviously using possession to attack the opposition, I do think that he was one of our most creative players and obviously made things happen for us. So unlike Patrick van Aanholt or Zaha, he didn't necessarily get an assist in the game, but the fact that he's able to still create chances and make things happen in the midfield is of course great to see. But it is going to be really disappointing to see him leave. Obviously we don't know what's going to happen with him next season, but by the sounds of it, he wants to stay at Chelsea, and depending on who their new manager is will depend on whether he comes back to Palace on a permanent or another loan, or whether he'll get a chance at Chelsea. So at the moment his future is unknown. But I've got to, you know, I've seen his message really heartfelt on social media. It's really great to see a player who's, even though he's on loan, the fact that he's got the emotion and he said such a heartful message is of course great to see. And to be honest, it may sound a bit, you know, sort of puppy like, but we are going to miss him, because he's such an important player for us, and we should be realistically, regardless of what happens at Chelsea, we should be trying our very hardest to try and get him here next season, because I think he's been absolutely outstanding, and I think that we could take his development to a new level, especially with Roy Hodgson at the helm. But overall here, Loftus-Cheek playing on that left-hand side of the midfield I thought he'd done a relatively good job, not necessarily as good as he has been in recent weeks with getting a goal or an assist, but I do still think he was quite influential in that midfield battle and certainly did make things happen. So Loftus-Cheek here, a 7 for him. Now to move on to the captain, Luka Milivojevic, who I'm going to give a 7. The skipper's tackling and ability to break up play in the middle of the park was destructive. Milivojevic came close to opening the scoring in the first half when he fired just wide from the edge of the box after winning back possession. So Luka Milivojevic here, the captain, I've given him a 7, and much like his performances have been throughout the whole of this season, it was sort of another usual captain's performance from him, and once again another performance where he done a really decent job in giving protection to the back four. Now, as I've briefly mentioned quite a lot in this podcast already in terms of West Brom not really threatening, yes, that was the case, but it was still quite an important role with Milivojevic to make sure that even though they weren't attacking, the few chances that they did go forward, we were able to sort of nullify their attack. So Milivojevic, yes, obviously he didn't have too much to do, but the fact that he was, was able to still stop as few of the attacks as possible was of course great to see as well. But the main thing that's impressed me here against West Brom, but realistically has impressed me across the whole season, is just his tackling ability, which of course here against West Brom was absolutely fantastic once again, but also his ability to break up play in the midfield was destructive. So once again, West Brom, a bit low on confidence, just got relegated. They could either go here with a fight and have trying to at least get a consolation to end the season on, but obviously they didn't get that here. They were low on confidence, and of course one of the reasons for that is because Milivojevic's domination of the midfield, breaking up everything that West Brom were trying to do down the middle. And of course it was quite destructive in the fact that whenever they had an attack, he was able there to stop it. Now of course in terms of goal scoring chances, he's our top goal scorer. He's ended the season as our top goal scorer, and obviously although he he's a defensive midfielder, he still has had a few attacking chances in recent games, and most notably here was one in the first half on the edge of the box. The ball's come out to him, he's lashed it first time and it just went wide quite early in the game, and that was once again with him being destructive in the midfield. He won back possession, drove forward, and of course when the ball came back to him he had a shot and it went just wide. So once again proving that he's not only good defensively with with his ability to make these tackles or these blocks, but also he's obviously got that threat with having such a good long shot and of course a lot of power in his shot as well. And as I briefly mentioned at the beginning, it was just a usual captain's performance. I can talk all day about his defensive contribution and obviously the chances he had going forward, but what you want from your captain is you want them to command the side well as wearing the heart on the sleeve and obviously doing what they can for the team. And basically that's what we got from Milivojevic, which was of course great to see. But what I want to end in, obviously I don't want to end talking about his performance because I've already talked quite a lot about that already, but I want to talk about and pose a question to you guys, whether you do think he should be the club captain next season. Because of course the official captain, who we haven't seen play for since he got injured against Man City, is of course Jason Punchin. Scott Down was the second one as well, who's he played quite a lot at the beginning of the season, and of course Mamadou Sakho's also had chances to be the captain as well. But for me personally, I think it's no question really that Luka Milivojevic gets the captain's armband officially next season, because I do think he does fully deserve it. And of course if he can continue putting in sort of what you would expect from a captain, if he keeps putting in these performances as well as performing as well as he does, as well as even though he's a defensive midfielder, if he can carry on scoring as many goals as he did, then of course it's going to be great for us next season. But do comment below in the comment section or get involved with us at eCrystalPalace on Twitter. But do comment below what you think about him and whether you do think he does deserve to be the captain next season, because I certainly think that it's not only the fact that he's got the leadership abilities, but you need one of your better players to be the captain, because obviously they can step up. And of course Milivojevic does fit that mould really nicely. So Milivojevic here, another good performance from him and a 7 for him. Now to move on to Yohan Cabaye, who I'm going to give a 7. Palace fans may have seen the last of Yohan Cabaye in red and blue, with the midfielder out of contract and yet to see it sign a new deal. Played some neat and tidy passes on the edge of the box. So Yohan Cabaye here, I've given him a 7, and his performance was pretty similar to Luka in the fact that he was quite important to winning that midfield battle. So realistically, there isn't really too much to say about his performance, just because he done the basics right and of course was really important to the way we played. But the main reason I've given him a 7 is of course his passing, which I thought was fantastic in the game, and I'll go on to talk about the man of the match shortlist later, but certainly I would say that he's up there. And although he may not have impressed people with a goal or an assist as we saw from Zaha and Patrick van Aanholt, but just his contribution on the ball, with his passing ability, with his ability to start attacks, as well as just his ability when he's on the edge of the area to either have a shot or create a chance. All of them things put together really just sums up how he is as a player. And you know, as I've said quite a lot this season, although he can't last a full 90 minutes, but he did so here, I believe, even though he can't do that, he still works hard for the time he's on the pitch. And of course that was also very impressive to see. So once again, fully deserving of the 7 because of obviously the fact that he worked hard and because of his passing play. But what I want to end talking about his performance is the fact that he hasn't yet signed a new deal. And of course, when he puts in performances like this, especially in the first half where he was arguably our best player, making tackles left, right and centre, when you say that actually arguably he's one of our best players, it's really important for him to sign a new deal. And although he hasn't come out and said, I'm going to stay, he's certainly sort of hinting towards that, saying, I'm happy in London at the minute, but I'm going to wait a few weeks for my agent and I to decide what's best. But, you know, it's come out in the media that Palace have put an offer on the table, so hopefully he would accept that offer and stay with Palace for another season, because for me, he's one of our most influential, important players, not only defensively, but also offensively. So it'll be a shame to see him go, but hopefully the fact that he's happy in London, and obviously the fact that he's loved here by the fans, and obviously the fact that Roy Hodgson values him as a player in the squad, hopefully that will see him get a new contract. But Yohan Cabaye here, you know, people may say it was his last game for Palace. You know, he looked like he was waving goodbye at the end. But I personally have a little bit of optimism. I hope that he signs a new deal and hopefully we'll see more of him next season. But his performance here, fully deserving of the 7, working hard on and off the ball, you know, making tackles, making passes forward as well. And the main thing for me, and the main thing which really impressed me, is the fact that he worked hard. So Yohan Cabaye here, a 7 for him. Now let's move on to James McArthur, who I'm going to give a 6. Didn't really have any real impact on the game. Tracked back well but was fairly quiet throughout. But for diving and then was replaced by Christian Benteke. So James McArthur here, I've given him a 6, and much like what I said with Wayne Hennessy and a few players so far today, it wasn't necessarily the fact that he played bad, it's just really the fact that he didn't really have any real impact on the game, and that's the reason why I haven't really got too much to say about him, other than the fact that he was fairly solid throughout, because realistically, because there were other players who were playing so well, it just made some of the other players not look like they're playing as well, but still I thought they had some sort of impact on the game. But realistically, James McArthur here, you know, if you compare him to someone like Yohan Cabaye in the last few weeks has played slightly worse than McArthur, and this was just a game where it swapped around, where McArthur didn't play as good as he has been, and obviously Yohan Cabaye was having one of his better games recently. Now of course James McArthur, you know, his performances are usually filled of energy, and obviously the pressing as well, and of course because West Brom, you know, they're a very solid defensive team, it would have been good, especially in that first half, for us to put pressure on them. And of course, yes, he did do that in glimpses, but the fact that they were able to go in at half time at 0-0, and it took obviously up until midway through the second half for us to score our goals, just really proves that actually how solid West Brom were at the back up until that point, but also just shows actually maybe the pressing wasn't as effective as it could have been. Now, that's not to put anything down on McArthur's performance, it's just the fact that I didn't think he performed as good as he has been in the last few games, and it's pretty hard to do that when you set such high standards in recent games. It's pretty hard to keep that up. Now the one talking point about his performance, other than it really isn't about his performance, it's just about what happened on the field, and that's the fact that he got booked for diving, and then shortly after that he got taken off for Christian Benteke. Now in terms of that dive, I don't think at all it was a dive. You know, haven't really seen much debate about it, realistically, because people just know it's the end of the season, it doesn't really matter anyway. And actually it wasn't really a dive, so realistically I don't think there's anything to moan about there, because it's the end of the season, all of the cards get wiped anyway, so nothing really to worry about. But it just shows once again the inconsistency with referees. You know, that is not necessarily a dive, but it's definitely still a foul as well. So the fact that the player stuck his leg out, pushed him to the ground, I don't see how any referee can say that that's a dive. And like I've said quite a lot this season, if a referee's not sure on a decision, you don't make it. So if you're not sure whether it's a penalty or not, you don't give the penalty. And obviously if you're not sure whether it's a dive or not, you just carry on with play, because what's the point in booking someone where it could be wrong? So at least if you don't give a decision either way, or at least if you don't give a decision, there will obviously be a little bit more less controversial because you haven't given someone something for doing something they didn't do. Now, of course, he got taken off with Christian Benteke. You know, that's not to say that he had a bad performance. It's just the fact that we needed a focal point up front, and obviously Benteke brought it to us. But overall, I do think he was fairly solid throughout the game. And overall, if it wasn't for the referee booking him, like I've said already, he had a pretty terrible game, the referee. But if it wasn't for him, you know, sending him for booking, you would say that his overall performance was fairly solid. But like I've said, it would have been nice to see him getting a little bit more involved, like players like Cabaye. But of course, we didn't see that in the game. But that's not to put anything down on his performance, because I do think overall it was fairly good. So James McArthur here, giving him a 6, didn't really get involved as he would have liked, and of course was taken off and substituted for Benteke. But overall, another fairly solid game from him. Now to move on to Andros Townsend, who I am going to give a 7. Perhaps didn't get on the ball as much as he would have liked, but did look lively on the rare occasions that we were in possession. Had a glorious chance to score when he was put through on goal by Zaha, but he fluffed his lines and shot wide. So Andros Townsend here, I've given him a 7, and this is a player who this season has probably gone underrated, and arguably, because obviously his performances have gone unnoticed, he, you know, might not get into the England squad, but I do think his performances certainly do deserve that. And certainly he's one of our unsung heroes this season, because although he hasn't scored loads of goals, he's actually got quite a few assists, but also just his attacking threat in general has been outstanding. And certainly, although he didn't get on the ball as much as he would have liked here against West Brom, he was still on the rare occasions in the first half that we were in possession, he was still very lively and was still, you know, proving a threat against the opposition. But in terms of, you know, the game here against West Brom, especially in the first half, where I think the overall team, so the whole team, was fairly sort of lacklustre. Both West Brom and Palace were quite lacklustre. I do think that, I don't know how to describe it, but I think we started the game well, sort of died out, and it was quite lacklustre in that respect. And I do think that Townsend was one of these players, actually, he could have got on the ball more, but he didn't. And of course, because he couldn't get on the ball as much as he would have liked, he didn't really have that much impact. But like I've said, on the rare occasions we did get forward in that first half, I thought he was fairly lively. And of course, in the second half, he was one of our best attacking threats, which is of course great to see. Now, in terms of, I've talked about already the fact that, yes, he hasn't got that many goals this season. He's got lots of assists. There was another great chance here to score another goal. Put through on goal by Zaha, obviously great build-up play there. And of course, Andros Townsend, under pressure, fluffed his lines and shot wide. But obviously the fact that, even though it's an unorthodox front two, the fact that they're able to link up and give each other chances is of course great to see. And obviously Townsend, he'll obviously have a break over the summer, but hopefully next season he can improve his end product even more, because certainly we've seen what he can do with shooting from distance and, you know, the few goals he scored. So if he can just improve that even more, chances like the one he had on Sunday, he wouldn't fluff and would have put that into the top corner, because it was a great chance after being created by Wilf, and it would have been even nicer if we had been able to, you know, to finish that off. But overall, I do think a 7 is a fair result when you consider that he didn't have as much impact as he would have liked and didn't get on the ball as much as he liked, but he was still lively. And, you know, the fact that he worked hard is of course great to see. Had an overall great game, and it was great to see his dad come out in support of him. And realistically, other than that poor miss where he obviously fluffed his line, I do think his overall performance was quite good. Not necessarily worth getting an 8, but I do think a 7 for Townsend's performance was fair enough. Now to move on to our final player, Wilfried Zaha, who I am going to give a 9. Crystal Palace's player of the season was up to his usual tricks, as he drifted around the West Brom defence, finding success in every duel that he pitted himself against. He had 2 great chances to score before making no mistake, when he positioned himself well to turn in Van Aanholt's pullback cross. Once again, Palace's match winner, and once again well worth the ticket price alone. So Wilfried Zaha here, I've given him a 9, and much like what I said with Van Aanholt in the fact that his offensive contribution got rewarded with a goal, this was exactly the same for Wilfried Zaha here, because his overall attacking play against West Brom was absolutely outstanding. And certainly the fact that he was given the Player of the Year award obviously last week is obviously a fitting way to end the season with another good performance, which once again basically backs up the fact that he should have been, or that he deserves to be our Player of the Season. But in terms of his performance here against West Brom, where you've got the likes of West Brom who didn't really threaten us throughout the game, on the other hand, Palace trying to finish in the top 10, which we ultimately didn't do because I think it was Newcastle won. Even though that was the case, I still do think we went out all guns blazing, and certainly Zaha was constantly attacking the West Brom backline, and like he always does, he's up to his usual tricks. You know, he likes to drift around the opposition's defence, and of course whenever he had sort of a one-on-one duel, he was able to go forth and obviously create a chance off the back of it. Now, of course, he had many chances throughout the game to score, you know, with crosses coming in from, you know, from either side, and there was two in particular which, of course, he didn't score from. You know, one noticeably that got saved by Forster. So once again, not only was he being a threat to the opposition, but he was having chances inside the box. But then, of course, he got his chance, you know, and he made no mistake this time. Obviously, Van Aanholt, great run and overlap on the left-hand side, puts the ball into the box, and Zaha makes no mistake, hits it first time into the net in front of the Homesdale. And of course, a really important goal, because up until that point, yes, we were playing well, but the game was quite dull. So the fact that we were able to get that goal, which sort of propelled us forward to get that second and ultimately win the game, that was of course really important. But once again, yes, he got the goal, of course, and he was involved in most of our attacks, but once again, he was our match winner, because realistically, the game was a bit dead at that point. 0-0, it looked like, for me personally, it was going to end that way, even though we were playing so well. So the fact that he was able to get that goal to, you know, get us back into that sort of scenario where we can win a match, and then for Van Aanholt to add a second about 8 minutes later, that of course helped us to go forth and get the win. And once again, it's well worth the ticket price. You know, the fact that we've got a player with so much talent, and the fact that he's able to, you know, I don't know how to describe it, but the fact that he's just able to entertain us, that's the word I was looking for. The fact that he's able to entertain us for, you know, the price of our ticket alone just makes it well worth it, and once again just proves how much of an outstanding player he is. But in terms of going back to the goal, you know, I've given him a 9 because obviously his overall performance was good, but for that goal alone, he does deserve to get a 9. I think it was a great finish for the goal, the great reactions to get inside the box, get on the end of the cross, and also it was even better the fact that he was able to hit it first time into the goal. And of course, obviously I talked about, you know, great knowledge and great skill, but also the movement as well. So it wasn't only for the goal that his attacking movement was good, but most notably for the goal, the fact that he was able to run into the area was of course very impressive. And as we can see now, yes, we've known this for years now, but he's once again just proven the point that he is a very clever player, and he has got end product, but also he's got that trickery and that sort of cleverness to also add to his game. And to be honest, my final point really is just the fact that we're so lucky to have him. And of course, there's loads of reports in the media that he's going to go to Man City, you know, Liverpool are linked with him, but he's come out in the press. Well, the press don't want to cover this, they want to manipulate the quote, but he's come out and said, I'm happy at Palace, I'm loving playing my football here, the fans love me, I don't really want to leave in a minute. But of course, the news and the media, they all want to try and make it seem like he wants to move, and they obviously want him to move so they can sort of write stories about it. But he said quite clearly he's happy at Palace, so at the moment we're lucky to have him, and long may it continue. And as it seems at the moment, although there's loads of reports, he's happy playing at Palace, so we can obviously plan forward for next season. But Wilfried Zaha here, once again, fantastic attacking talent, and was one of our best attacking players on the field, and certainly was one of the high players on that man of the match shortlist. But personally for me, I think he's fully deserving of the 9, not just for his attacking threat alone, but obviously for the goal. And obviously, in terms of the goal, the fact that he had great movement and great sort of knowledge of the play around him was also very good as well. So Wilfried Zaha here, our final player, a 9 for him. So I'm just going to move on now just to talk briefly about the substitutes, because realistically, you know, last game of the season we were already 2-0 up. So when these substitutes came on, you know, realistically they're not going to have that much impact on the game. And of course, with the likes of Papa Soare and Chong Lee, they came on not necessarily because they were going to change the game, but just to give them a few minutes at the end of the season. Probably because Chong Lee's probably off in the summer on a free transfer because he hasn't been given a new deal. And obviously Papa Soare hasn't played all season, so when we're 2-0 up, just give him a run out in the team. And of course, maybe that may help his confidence, but I personally think, although he may be able to prove me wrong, but I think he may not be the same player again after his injury. But in terms of our first substitute, that was Christian Benteke. I'm going to give him a 6 because when he came on with about sort of 25 minutes still to go of the match, I think he sort of gave us that focal point in the attack, which of course made sure that we had somewhere to try and aim to, and obviously that definitely helped our attacks because we went on to score 2 goals late on in the game. But obviously he helped us to find a way to push up against the West Brom defence, so they were playing quite deep, quite solid at the back. But the fact that we brought in a target man, someone who we could aim all of our attacks to, that seemed to improve our overall performance. And I do think in terms of positional play, I think he found some quite good positions throughout the whole game, and there was one header that he had that was tamely saved, or that was a header that was tame, that was easily saved. But that just goes to show that if you've got a target man and you ping balls to him and target him, of course he'll have chances on goal. And unluckily for us, his header was saved. But I do still think that coming off the bench, he still had an impact, because when he came on, he gave us that focal point, and improved our overall attack. Now in terms of Papa Souare and Chong Lee, I'm not going to give either of them ratings because, as I've already mentioned, they weren't really on the pitch long enough. But obviously Papa Souare came on in about the 80th minute for Van Aanholt, and like I've said, Van Aanholt scored the goals, so he was fine to go off the pitch. And obviously Papa Souare came on for sort of, I don't think it's his last game. I think he'll probably stay at the club another season. But I do think, obviously, it was quite nice for him to go out in front of the fans, who, of course, we've supported him through his injury. But also, it's just great to see him back on the field. And of course, Chong Lee came on in about the 80th minute as well. You know, not long enough to make any real influence in the game. And the only reason I think he did come on is obviously Roy Hodgson, with a bit of sentiment, with his possibly his last game, obviously just giving him a run out in front of the fanatics. Oh, sorry, not just the fanatics, but obviously in front of the whole fans at Sellers Park. But overall, two of the substitutes didn't really make that much impact on the game. But certainly Christian Benteke, although I've only given him a 6, he was obviously quite important to changing the game and you know, helping us to push on to get the win. Now in terms of, you know, the game as a whole, just giving you sort of a summary of the game, I do think, you know, it was fully deserving. The standing ovation that Hodgson got, the noise around Sellers was quite deafening, and it's obviously great to see that after the terrible start we've had this season, it's great to see that we've come out the other end with a very good season ultimately. But also it's great to see that obviously the fans are appreciating the fantastic job that Roy Hodgson and his staffing team have also done. But I do think, especially after that second half performance, after the first half, which wasn't the greatest, not the worst, but wasn't the greatest, the fact that we put in such a good second half performance and the standing ovation just made it even better. In terms of Zaha, once again, like we always see from him this season, he was pulling the strings and was our main orchestrator of all of our attacks going forward. So once again proving how much of a talent and asset he is to the club in the fact that he pulled the strings. And in terms of Wan-Bissaka, I've seen quite a few people saying this, in the fact that they think he's the best right back they've seen at Palace since Nathaniel Klein. I necessarily don't think he's up to that level quite yet, but I do certainly think he's just below it, and he certainly, if he carries on with these performances next season, he certainly will get to that next level. But I do understand why people are saying he's the best right back since Klein, because I think his performances are sort of matching that high level set by Klein, and obviously that meant that Klein has obviously he's now an English international. But in terms of our football, you know, people said at the beginning of the season when we appointed Roy Hodgson that it was going to be boring football, nil-nils, but actually we've done the complete opposite, and if anything, we've done what we tried to do and what we thought would happen under Frank de Boer. So if anything, we've gone full circle and got a manager who doesn't normally play, well, he does play attractive football, but not normally is known for that. And the fact that we've gone to that, to actually ended up playing what we thought we were going to get in the first place, is obviously great to see. So the tiki-tack football was fantastic to see, and when you consider how deep West Brom were playing and how well drilled they were, this tiki-tack football was a bit too much for us. And that's seen with the goal that Van Aanholt scored. All of this passing, when West Brom are sitting back, they don't know where the ball is, and of course cracks are formed, and of course players are able to run inside the box. But like I've said, because of our tiki-taka football, we were able to get that breakthrough in the end, and of course go on to win the game. Now, to be honest, because of this tiki-taka football, we are looking like a top footballing side. You know, we're not necessarily going to be top half of the top. We're not going to be top half of that top half of the Premier League table, but certainly we're playing some great football at the minute. And I think on our day we could match any team in the league. And to be honest, when we're performing as well as this, especially against teams around us, and the fact that we went 6 games unbeaten, it really has got myself and quite a lot of fans, you know, really looking forward and excited for next season. Because realistically, if we can keep players like Zaha and put Wan-Bissaka into the side next season, then it's certainly going to be a good season next year, because obviously these players have been good and been key this season, but to have them for another season and just push on with Roy Hodgson at the helm once again, have another sort of season with no drama, no sackings, just a season with no drama basically, just a season where we can have a bit of stability, that will of course be great to see. But to be honest, as this is the last podcast of the season, I just want to give, finally just give credit to Roy Hodgson, Ray Lewington, Stephen Reid and Dean Kiley, because they've all done fantastic jobs, and well done to them. They came to the club in a difficult situation, managed to turn it around, and have outdone all of our expectations, because I was quite happy with 16th at the beginning of the season, or 17th even, just surviving relegation. But the fact that we've been able to be safe and avoid relegation and do as well as we did to get to 11th is of course great to see. And of course Roy Hodgson will get all of the plaudits, but I do think that the coaching team, so Ray Lewington, Stephen Reid and Dean Kiley, and of course the medical side as well, for getting the players back as quick as possible, we've of course got to give credit to them. So once again, credit to these guys, and like I've said already, I am looking forward to next season. So I'm now going to move on to my man of the match. But before I do that, I give you my man of the match. I thought the biggest influence in the game. I'm now going to give you the 4 nominations I put forward for the award. Now, of course, before I go on to give you the 4 nominations as I do every week, I've got to say that actually, much like the last sort of few weeks where we've ended the season 6 games unbeaten, of course the performances have been relatively good in that time. And once again here, 2-0 win against West Brom. Yes, the first half weren't that great. All we really had was possession. In the second half, we completely dominated that and obviously did deserve to win the game. Now, of course, when you have such a good performance, there's going to be players who miss out on the man of the match shortlist. And of course, this has happened quite a lot in the last sort of month or so. And I think last weekend, especially, against Stoke, quite a lot of good performances. And of course, I couldn't pick everyone. But in terms of good performers in the side who don't get on my shortlist, you've got the likes of Luka Milivojevic, Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Andros Townsend. Now, of course, some of you may disagree and you may want to put some of these on the shortlist, or maybe they may even have won yours. But for me, I just think that there were 4 other players that just stood out for me more than these guys did. And it's not to say that they had bad performances, it's just that I thought some players done better. And, like I say every week, if you do disagree with me, then of course do comment below because I would like to hear your opinion. But of course, like I've said, Luka, Loftus-Cheek, Townsend, they had very good performances, but of course I picked 4 of the players. Now, these players, a mixture from across the field. We've got defenders, midfielders and attackers, which once again shows how much of a balanced performance it was, so of course that's great to see as well. Now, in terms of the players, I've gone with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Patrick van Aanholt, Johan Cabaye and Wilfried Zaha. So I've got 2 fullbacks, a midfielder and an attacker, which really just shows, it really epitomises how the game was all round. Now, in terms of Wan-Bissaka, I thought he played really, really well, and I was calling for him to be in the side weeks ago, but because Joe Ward's been injured, he's got his chance to come back into the side for the last game of the season and performed really well. And for that reason, in terms of just coming back into the team, that's a really great thing. But the way he reacted to that and the fact that whenever under pressure, he defended well, he responded really well to the game itself. So the fact that he was able to come back into the side, perform as well as he did, as well as putting in fantastic sliding tackles and keeping a clean sheet as well, and obviously just being solid defensively, for that, obviously he does deserve to go on the shortlist. And as I've been saying, and I've said it in the player ratings, but as I say nearly every week now, yes, Joe Ward's been a great servant to the club, but Aaron Wan-Bissaka, based on what we've seen so far, he's the guy who's got so much talent, and he could be the one to lead us next season. So hopefully he gets his chance in pre-season, gets this play next season, because he certainly does look like a talent. But another performance here where he's made it onto the man of the match shortlist, and when you consider he's played, I think, 7 games this season, for over half of them he's been in the shortlist. So really that just shows how good his performances have been here. Now, of course, Patrick van Aanholt, once again, clean sheet, so good defensively. Really impressed me personally on one-on-one defending, so that's something he was terrible at the beginning of the season. He's improved that here, and against West Brom he was fantastic in them sort of one-on-one situations. Obviously, we know he's so good going forward. Once again here against West Brom, whenever he ventured forward, he was creating loads of chances. And of course, when Zaha scored his goal, obviously it was a great ball in from that left-hand side for Van Aanholt, and obviously Wolf poked it home. So not only was he, helping Zaha and setting up his other teammates, but he also went on to show great composure and score his own goal. Now, of course, the goal was good, and the fact that he rounded the keeper and slotted it into the goal, had enough pace on it and accuracy to get it in. But the main thing for me is the build-up play as well. So although Van Aanholt's going to get credit for his goal, for rounding the goalkeeper, the build-up play and that 1-2 passing before it was, you could say, even better than the goal itself. But still, Patrick van Aanholt, a goal and an assist, and his 3rd game he scored in consecutively, which is of course great to see. But once again, clean sheet, solid defensively, and of course an attacking threat. Obviously, Johan Cabaye here, this is one that some people may disagree with, but I thought, especially in the first half where there wasn't really any real attacking intent from either side, and we weren't really playing as well as we did in the second. Of course, Johan Cabaye, along with Wilfried Zaha, were one of our, some of our standout players. Now, in terms of Cabaye, I thought, like he always does, shows great composure on the ball, lovely, neat and tidy passes all over the field, and, in terms of helping us win the midfield battle, he was quite key to that. And of course, on the edge of the area, we're trying to create chances. He was also quite important to that as well. So once again, Cabaye, like he always does, he always brings that calmness, that experience to the side. But the thing that impressed me here against West Brom, and the reason he's on this shortlist, is because of his passing, which once again was brilliant. Obviously, Wilfried Zaha, as I said, along with Johan Cabaye, is probably one of our better performers. Not the best, but one of our better performers in that first half. And of course, he went up tenfold in the second. But of course, like he always does, he likes to do loads of tricks, and he bamboozled the West Brom defence, and understandably, they'd done a bit of research, because in the first half they really found it, they really done well defending against him. But in the second half, his trickery came out, and obviously he was able to grow into the game and had a real impact on that second half. Of course, when he, Van Aanholt, I talked about getting the cross in, but the fact that Wilfried Zaha scored that goal right in front of the homestead was great to see. But obviously the cross from Van Aanholt was great from that left-hand side. But the fact that Zaha was able to run into the box and, sort of toe poke it in the goal to score a great goal, that was of course great to see. And of course, he was also involved slightly in Van Aanholt's goal as well. So once again, he's showing that actually Wilfried Zaha, even though he may not have had the best of the games in the first half, his second half was absolutely outstanding, and obviously he got the goal and was involved in all of our attacking games once again. And once again, he's Palace's match winner. The game was a bit dead at 0-0. It needed a goal to sort of spark it into life and to get Palace going. We scored that goal, and after that, obviously we got the second, and obviously our domination did go on from that. But in terms of these 4 players, I do think they all deserve to be on this shortlist and deserve to get a little bit more sort of praise than other players, because I do think their performances were quite crucial. Once again, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Patrick van Aanholt, defensively fairly solid and both very good at making slide tackles, one-on-one defending, but also going forward, obviously proved a threat. Obviously, Yohan Cabaye, as he always does, very neat passer of the ball, and obviously his passing was quite important to that midfield battle. And of course, Wilfried Zaha, up to his usual tricks, lots of tricks, probably, I could say our best attacking threat. And of course, he got that winner in front of the... Sorry, he didn't get the winner. He obviously scored that goal to put us 1-0 up, which of course was great in front of the Homesdale. But in terms of the performance here, everyone's been alright, and for the first time in quite a while, I'm actually going to go against what was in the player ratings. So, of course, I gave someone like Wilfried Zaha a 9, but actually I'm going to give the award to Aaron Wan-Bissaka. So congratulations, Aaron. You don't get a trophy or certificate, but you do get my sincere congratulations on what was another solid performance from you. But the main reason I've given it to him above the likes of Wilfried Zaha is that Wilfried Zaha's got quite a lot of man of the matches this season, and I think we've got to give praise to Aaron Wan-Bissaka, because obviously he's played great this season, but the fact that he's able to come into the side, still perform as well as he did, making sliding tackles here, there and everywhere, as well as proving a threat going forward and, trying to do 1-2s with the wingers, as well as, just responding really well to when we were under the cosh, let's say, from West Brom when they were attacking us. The fact that he responded so well and of course kept that clean sheet is really impressive as well. But like I said already, Wan-Bissaka, Van Aanholt, Cabaye, Zaha do deserve to get on the shortlist, but I do think that Wan-Bissaka, even though I gave him a low rating, I do think just for his influence and his importance to that clean sheet, he does sort of edit for me. And of course, notable mentions must go to Luka Milivojevic, Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Andros Townsend. So now you've heard my match report, player rankings and my man of the match. That concludes this week's podcast. Now I've got interviews with Roy Hodgson, Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Yohan Cabaye following the game.
Ruben, your last game of your loan spell today, talk us through the game first.
No, it was a tough game. I thought first half, it was a battle. It was a battle in the first half, but it was like against Stoke. We didn't get the break in the first half, and we done the safe thing, come out strong, and got the 2 goals. So it was a massive game for the fans, just to give the fans something to go home on and go on a break with. So it's fantastic.
And how much have you enjoyed playing for Palace this year?
I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed being around the boys, the staff, the backroom staff. The fans are amazing. It's just a real good place to play my first full season in football. And I thank the club, the chairman, manager, fans, everyone. It's been great.
I'm not going to ask you if you're going to come back, because you'll have to give a political football answer. But looking ahead to the summer, what are you going to be doing on Wednesday, waiting to see if you get the call from England?
I'm not sure yet. I expect I'll get a text from someone to tell me I've been selected or not. So I'll just be waiting around, and hopefully it's a good text.
Thanks for talking to us, Ruben. Yohan, home win today and a clean sheet. It was a great way to end the season, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what we was looking for. It was important to finish well the season after a bad start, and also a home game is always special. Look at the crowd. The atmosphere was brilliant once again today, and it was really important to finish on a high, and that's what we did. But unfortunately, we didn't finish 10th. That was our target, but we won today with a clean sheet, as you said, and it's a fantastic way to finish before holidays.
And what does the future hold for you now?
I don't know. I don't know. It was a hard season, a tough season. So I will have a chat with my agent, and then I will see. Also have a chat with the club, with the chairman. I had 3 seasons, fantastic here. I love the club. The life in London is perfect. So I will see. I have no stress about my future. So yeah, I wanted to enjoy today, and we'll see what's happened next.
And we saw the fans singing your name, that great song.
Yeah.
Did you sing it yourself?
Yeah, no, as I said, the fans were brilliant, and I want to thank them once again, because since my first day, they were fantastic with me. Try to give them back the support. It's special to play here. The place is working every weekend in, and to finish at 11th today, it's also for them, and I hope the future will be even better for them.
And finally, how are you doing on Football Manager at the moment?
Actually, I won the league with Lille.
Oh, nice! Congratulations.
And the French Cup in the same season. So I'm in the 3rd season now. I need to carry on.
Okay, I just finished 5th with Real Betis in La Liga.
Oh,
yeah, I'm doing well in the Europa League as well.
Well done.
Thanks, Johan.
Thank you.
Yes.
Fantastic way to end the season.
Yes, it was a wonderful way to end the season. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Most importantly of all, I think, what I want to say tonight, and I won't speak for long, but what I want to say is important, I think, not just for me personally, because I've really enjoyed this season with the club, it's been great, but I want to speak on behalf of the players, because what you've done for us as supporters this year has been absolutely incredible. You haven't always seen us play as well as we've done recently. You've had to endure some defeats here at home. You've had to endure some performances at home which were nowhere near as good as the ones you've seen recently. But we've never doubted for 1 minute that your support is there, that you are behind us. You're suffering with us. You're winning with us and you're losing with us. And that's an incredible thing for any crowd to do. So finally, I welcome you all back here again next season. We're going to be determined to build on what we've done over these last few months, where we've really played a football which would have got us not only into the top half of the table, but maybe into the very top of the top half of the table. The club intends to build on that. But we'll need your support next year as well. We depend upon you. So thank you all very much indeed. Have a wonderful summer, and we look forward to seeing you again next season. Thank you.
So there you have it. Now further, Roy Hodgson, Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Johan Cabaye had to say after the game. That concludes this week's podcast for the game against West Brom. Thanks for the support this season, and make sure to come back in the next few weeks and months for my season review and transfer news. All that's left for me to say is, remember to up the Palace.